Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's the Property Podcast, episode 279. And yes, you may have guessed it, it's part 2 of our How to Be a Super-Landlord series.
These intros just keep getting better, Rob. Yeah, this is the Property Podcast. Thank you for joining us, where every Thursday morning property investors come together to get informed and inspired, and both of those in spades this week because it's part 2 of our interview with Super-Landlord Phil Stewardson. Today we're covering his journey from 10 properties all the way up to over 100, and we're talking about how he's done it and the tips he's got for anyone who wants to follow in his footsteps, which, if you're listening to this podcast, chances are is you. It's a fantastic listen, so don't go anywhere.
So this week we had a fight over who would cover this week's news story, but Rob, I'm feeling generous, so you can have the HMO regulations update.
You don't want to cover the details of HMO regulations yourself?
No.
Okay, I was going to be generous, but if you don't want it, I'll take it.
Enjoy.
Well, thank you very much. In a minute, I'll be reading out a list of square metre sizes, so stay tuned for that. This is something that's been around for a long time, but worth commenting on now because it's actually law, and it is confirmed that this is coming in from October. So this is new rules around HMOs, particularly affecting two things. Firstly, what actually requires an HMO licence at the national level, and secondly, minimum room sizes. So let's take the definition of an HMO first. Up till now, nationally, an HMO has required a licence if it's being lived in by 5 or more people forming 2 or more households over 3 or more stories. So in other words, if you've got a group of 5 or more people who are not a family living together and the property is 3 stories or higher, it needs a licence. Councils can have additional, more stringent requirements, but nationally, that's what it was. Now, what's happening from October is that the 3 stories requirement is being taken away. So now, whatever the property looks like, if there are 5 or more people who are not a single family living there, it's going to require an HMO licence. What that basically means is that a lot of properties that previously didn't require an HMO licence are going to now need one. So loads and loads more properties are going to need to be licensed by October. One estimate I've seen is 160,000. Whether that's accurate or not, I don't know. But either way, a lot of people who previously didn't need to worry about licences now will do. Of course, if you have an HMO in an area where the council locally had tougher restrictions anyway, then it's not something you need to worry about. The second part is minimum space. So now nationally, you can't have anyone sleeping in a room that is below 6.51 square metres. And again, local councils can reduce that down if they want to make it more stringent, but that is at the national level. Now, the effect of this is that you're going to have a lot of houses where you've got effectively a box room, where it's a single room, pretty small, you charge less rent for it, but somebody's happy to live there. From October, that's not going to be possible. So that's going to mean fewer rooms available. It's also going to mean that's going to hit the profits of a lot of people who have these properties, because that's a room that previously they rented out that now they won't be able to. So hopefully if you have HMOs in your portfolio or you're looking at acquiring some, this is something you'll be aware of already because we have known about this for a long time. But you do need to make sure that you've got everything in place by October.
And for those who are making larger returns from HMOs, well done, you deserve it, because let's face it, it's getting harder and harder to operate in that sector right now. But don't worry, we've got you covered. We'll continue, sometimes reluctantly, to deliver all the new regulation news so you can stay up to date with what's happening in the property market and not operate illegally, which some people may end up doing and not even know about it. So last week we had Super-Landlord Phil Stewardson on the podcast. And Phil and his brother Mark were featured in our latest Property Hub magazine, if you don't subscribe, because you can access the back issues online for free. So this week it's very much a follow-up chat. And if you missed part 1, we really urge you to go back and listen to that. That's last week's podcast. Because Phil's been so generous with his time. And last week he really lays the foundations for his story. We learned about how he got started, his original goals, and we followed his journey. And this week we continue with that journey. And we continue to take loads and loads from Phil's experience. Now, if you don't know, he and his brother have around 160 properties in their portfolio. And it's so varied, from just your simple terraced houses to service stations. There's so much experience in there that we had to make this a 2-parter. In this episode, we really wanted to dig into the lessons. And I started off asking Phil about his early success. Phil, what do you attribute to your early success? Because there's a lot of people who just want to get to not maybe the super landlord status that you're at, but just get to that 10. So what do you think you did well in that early period to allow you to have that success?
A number of factors, really. I think it definitely helps having someone to work with. As you know, I work with my brother. not doing it on your own, I think, is a help. And aside from that, we got, great family support from both our parents and lots of other relatives as well. You need support around you, and just the belief that what you want to do and a plan that you want to achieve. Our initial plan was for 10, but when we got there was so much more potential for what we're doing. If you can do that and you've got the support and you can come up with a plan and then break that plan down into chunks and sort of have targets to achieve, that's certainly the way we've always worked, I think.
So what was the transition like then to actually becoming a full-time landlord, to making the decision to give up your jobs? How much thought did you give it? Obviously, it was going very well, but how much thought went into the decision that this was now going to be your full-time job?
I don't think we had any other alternative, really. The clothing market, absolutely, the writing was on the wall. So as that market was shrinking, this was building at the same time. They just sort of worked hand in glove, really. So it literally, as one sort of fell away, the other grew and grew, to the point where, I think it's about 10 years ago now, we offered the people that we took on when we started the clothing company secure employment, and we were very keen to stick by that. I think the business ran till 2007. So at that point, 2007, 2008, I became full-time, and Mark to this day still does a little bit of photography, but it's only commercial, and it's 1 to 2 days a month. Sort of one took over from the other.
So it doesn't sound like every day spent at the poolside with cocktails, Phil.
No, that's my tenant's view. I think my tenant's view is that our butler wakes us about 9, and then we go and play tennis, have a massage, and go out for lunch. No, it's not like that at all. We have quite an early start. We both start around 6:30 to 7. And a lot of our time is moving equipment, sourcing materials. We are quite hands-on. We do minor repairs ourselves, or minor little bits of maintenance. The way the society is, I suppose, now, you can't leave any item of building equipment anywhere. So equipment has to come off each job every night and then be delivered back there on a morning. We've lost so much equipment over the last 20 years. And we all of the equipment is our own. We hire very little. We are capable of sort of managing it all ourselves, but over the years we haven't actually lost a Land Rover, but we've lost loads of parts off them. Bonnets, spare wheels, bits and pieces. We've lost 7 trailers and endless power tools. So literally everything comes away from a job on a night now and goes back in the morning. So that's Mark and I's probably biggest job. And then obviously in between we've got viewings. So yeah, it's a full day, it's a 12-hour day.
How would you say your time is split between the projects that you've currently got and looking for new projects and maintaining the portfolio you've already got? Because it seems like there's 3 main activities. There's looking for new stuff, there's looking after the things that are coming on now, and then the maintenance and rent collection and everything of the portfolio that you've already got.
Right. We have someone that helps us. We've got a couple of part-time staff that help with accounts and management and whatever. So finding properties now is difficult because the market is so tight. But compared with 20 years ago, there's so much now you can do from a desk. And, with the likes of Rightmove, you can set your little map to let you know of anything that comes up in that area. There's so much that is now sort of automated, and so much due diligence you can do without actually going to look at the property. With things like Street View, you can actually move down the road, look at the neighbours, look at the property, look at it from the air. I would say probably half our day is spent looking for new stuff, or looking at new stuff, or speaking to people that might potentially have something that might interest us, or people that we know in business, or other landlords that, we bought such a lot recently from other landlords that want to exit, perhaps elderly landlords that want to retire. And there's so much regulation and I suppose hostility to landlords now that so many are just thinking, if you've got one or two properties, so many are thinking, I don't know whether I can be bothered anymore.
So, Phil, you've done all sorts. You've talked through the list of some of the things that you've got in your portfolio, and I'm sure you've missed a couple as well. What kind of strategy are you pursuing right now? What's working for you today?
Right, so we are looking at anything that needs refurbishment now is so in demand that prices that they seem to achieve are just crazy. I looked at a property the other day which I thought was on the market for about 15 to 20,000 too much, and it's actually sold for above the asking price. What we always do on anything we offer on, we always buy for cash, and we always say we'll buy in 21 days. And if everything is done by both sets of solicitors and that works, then we can do that. If the vendor wants to change that date or wants some extra time, we'll work with that. The problem is there's so little residential around. So anything we are offering on, chances are we're going to lose it and it's going to go to someone else. But we will put a diary note for 21 days' time just to ring the agent and say, we offered on Brown Street. Today's the date. We would exchange and complete. How's your sale going? If there are any issues, or if it's progressing, then great. Well, otherwise we will just say, we are still here. We would like it, but as you know, we only offered X price. That's what it's worth to us. But if your sale isn't progressing and it's something your vendor would look at, we would still be interested, and it would be a hassle-free 21-day sale. Well, we certainly achieve more that way than we do buying it the first time round, because, as I say, there's such a little supply that everyone's chasing things that come to the market. And I think we're seeing again now people that want to do refurbishments as a bit of a hobby and underestimate the cost of doing the work, really. So although we do keep an eye on that, we're always trying to go with what's sort of out of fashion, really. And at the moment, retail is desperately out of fashion. I mean, all the headlines are about, how desperate retail is. And certainly for the big retailers, I think that's definitely the case. But for small niche retailers that offer local service, Amazon can't cut your hair. Or so things like that, hair, beauty, fast food, we've always been very keen on. We've got quite a few chip shops, Chinese takeaways, cafes. So things that can offer a local service for a good quality shop in a good position, there's great demand for. So if we can find larger units where we can split them, like we were doing with pubs when they were available in abundance, the early 2000s, so many pubs shut down. But there are loads of retail units out there that either refurbished and let as a shop, or if there's potential to let as two shops and create some accommodation above, if we can get a couple of flats. We're doing lots of that now.
So, Phil, there's going to be so many people listening who would just love a fraction of the success that you've had. If you could pass on just one piece of advice to our community, what would it be?
I think just to be determined and be willing to sacrifice both everything, really, effort, time. You do need a network around you, which, you need family support if possible. And you need to build good relationships with everyone that you're going to need to work with, suppliers, contractors. So many people that I see don't look after their contractors. And for us, that's been vital. We say to everyone that we deal with, we pay every Friday. So we pay by backs on a Friday, which is massively cut down a lot of the admin. We were constantly having people bringing bills in and ringing up and saying, "There's any chance I've got a big bill, can you pay me early?" So now everyone knows if they have their invoice in with us, and to do that, the work needs to be approved, but that's very rarely a problem. If guys know you're going to pay them quickly, they make a real effort to make sure there's no snags or there's no issues. So we say to everyone, if you can get your invoice in by end of the day on Wednesday, you'll be paid on our backs list on a Friday. So that builds massive goodwill with contractors. They know if they work for us today, and it's a 1 or 2 day job and they can drop their invoice in Wednesday, the money will be paid on Friday, be in their account next Monday at midnight. They love that, So if you can build that, and the same with tenants as well, if you look after them, all of these people are an advert for your business. So if you, start with one, and then you can work with all these people. If you've got them spreading the word, they're all acting as marketing for your little business. I mean, that's been so beneficial to us. One other thing I'd like to add, guys, which I think is very important, and particularly at the moment, in the past it was never an issue, but it's vital now, is that really, once you're ready to buy and you know what you're going to buy, to take advantage on how you structure your purchase, how you set up your business, really. In the old days, you would just buy something and not worry about it, but now with the things like Section 24, it's well worth considering advice from an IFA, a financial advisor, or an accountant on how you buy, whether it's personal names, joint names if you're a partnership, or do you go down the limited company structure route? And obviously that will be dictated by your long-term aims and, more importantly, perhaps your tax position and, future financial planning, really.
So once again, thank you to Phil. Brilliant to have him on the podcast. So much to take away from that. One of the things that I thought was particularly interesting is that a common piece of advice that you get is to figure out what works and stick with it. Just get a template and do that over and over again. Phil hasn't done that at all. It just goes to show that different advice works for different people. Phil and Mark have got the most amazingly varied portfolio. They've been in the game for a very long time. They've seen a lot change over that time. And what they have done is adapted as things change. And I think that's so important. They've not just kept trying to do the same thing over and over, even as things change and it's not as easy to do or it's not as profitable anymore. When circumstances change, they change as well. Another point that really stood out for me, and I'm so glad that Phil made it, was he was talking about how they get more properties the second time round, having originally had an offer rejected. This is something that we say over and over again. But it's amazing still how few people do this. Hopefully it'll be a few more now you've heard how much success Phil's had with it. But you go in with your price. If the offer gets rejected, don't just get disheartened and forget all about it and think, that was a waste of time. Follow up. And Phil's angle for this, I really love. I've never heard this before, but it's genius. Actually phoning up and go, you do know that today's the day that you'd be completing on this if you'd gone with us. How are you getting along? It's just brilliant. So that's something that you can take away and replicate straight away. And you'll find yourself securing more deals immediately as a result.
Phil's a smashing guy. The thing that allows him to do this and no one else, and that's why he's super successful and the reason no one else can do it, is there is no reason. Phil is a normal guy and he'll be the first to tell you that. But he's willing to do things that aren't normal. He works hard, like really hard, not 9 to 5. He doesn't do that. He gets up really early and puts the hours in. And he did that for decades. And he's eased off a little bit, but he still puts the hours in. And he's seen the benefit of surrounding himself with knowledgeable people. And again, I think that speaks volumes. This is a guy who knows his stuff, knows things inside out around property, but still uses the services of other experts. And I think these two things combined, if you just take these two things with you as guiding lessons of being successful in property and life, I think you'll do very, very well. If you do average work and average hours, you'll probably have average results because that's what you deserve. But if you're prepared to do things that aren't average and put in longer hours and be smart with it, don't just work and waste your time on silly things, but work on things that are important, but longer than the average person, and then build your knowledge up through resources like this, books and so on, but also through your network. Be someone who's always open to bettering themselves and learning, no matter what level of success you've had, and not getting complacent with the amount of time and effort you need to put in to build a success. If you do those two things with a sprinkling of luck, you're pretty much guaranteed to be a success in whatever you do. So it's time for some reviews, and thank you to these wonderful hubbers. Absolutely love this name. Muscle Bob Buff Pants has left us a 5-star review. I really hope that's his real name. If you have ever considered investing in property, then this is for you. The Robs have always try a balance of opinion and provide context to the themes being discussed. I've learnt a lot from these guys and I'm putting that knowledge to good use now, and my interest in property has been reinvigorated. I've binged from the beginning over the last few weeks, and it's interesting to see their opinions develop with how the property market's changed recently. Keep it up, guys, and thanks for everything.
Great name, great review. Thank you so much for that one. We love all reviews, no matter how funny your name is, as long as they come with 5 stars attached. So thank you very much for that. Really hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. We certainly enjoyed talking to Phil. And now we're going to leave you to go and do the important thing, which is putting some of those lessons into action. So you go do that, then we'll see you back here for Ask Rob and Rob on Tuesday. And in the meantime, if you'd like to hear what we get up to outside the podcast, go to thepropertyhub.net/discover. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.